Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 1. Begins with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern going back to the king and queen and telling them about their conversation with Hamlet. And they mentioned to the king and queen that Hamlet saw the players coming, and that he got excited about that, and they thought, okay, well, that's good. That shows, at least he takes some pleasure. And then Polonius tells Ophelia what to do. Remember, he said he set his daughter loose on him, on Hamlet? And he tells Ophelia, line 44, read on this book, that show of such an exercise may color your loneliness. We are oft to blame in this, 'tis too much proved, that with devotion's visage and pious action, we do sugar o'er the devil himself. Notice, he says, we're often to blame in this. That is, we can be held blameworthy for what? With devotion's visage, the show, the putting on of devotion, and pious action, that is behavior, we do what? We sugar over the devil himself. What does he mean, sugar over the devil himself? We don't really mean what we're saying and doing. That is, our inner thoughts and actions are different than our outward appearance. Okay? And that's why the king then has that wonderful little aside. Oh, 'tis true. How smart a lash that speech doth give my conscience. So that tells us the king feels guilt over what he's done, murder of Hamlet's father, and what he is currently doing. Okay? So Polonius says, I hear him coming, let's withdraw. What do? They go and they stand behind the arras. So here's the stage again, Shakespeare form. And the arras is either a curtain there at the center of the stage, or there's probably or possibly one around either of the two doors. But if they stand there, are they still on the stage? Well, whether they are or not, Ophelia is out here. She's on the stage. Okay? And Hamlet comes in. Now again, look at your stage direction. Ophelia pretends to read a book. Hamlet enters. To be or not to be, that is the question. Now, this speech is almost always, and I would say 99.9% of the time, taken to be a soliloquy. But it's not a soliloquy. A soliloquy is when you have one person on the stage. A soliloquy also, as we've talked about, a soliloquy tells us what the character's inmost thoughts and beliefs and ideas really are. But if it's not a soliloquy, we don't get that inner knowledge of the character. Okay? So, when Hamlet delivers this, perhaps the most famous speech in all of English literature, when Hamlet delivers this, is he telling us what he's really thinking? Not necessarily. Okay? To be or not to be? That is the question. That is the choice of existing or not existing. Is that really a question? Isn't it really more of a fact? Either you do exist or you don't exist. And if you don't exist, there's no you to ask, do I exist? To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. Whether, which of the two, to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms, weapons, against the sea of troubles and by opposing, that is opposing the sea of troubles, to end them. To end what? What does the them refer to? The troubles. Well, how do you oppose the sea of troubles? You kill them. Well, where are the sea of troubles? In this distracted globe? The language Hamlet uses earlier? Okay? Notice, go back to the first part of that. 'Tis nobler in the mind. What kind of word is nobler? He's made a noun into an adjective. Okay? What form of adjective is nobler? Noble, nobler, noblest. It's comparative. Superlative would be noblest. Comparative to what? Okay?
To suffer or to take arms, which when comparing these two is the nobler?
Exactly. Which of these two is the most noble action? To endure or to end? To die. To sleep. No more. And by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. Notice, flesh is heir to. These natural shocks are part and parcel of life. They are the legacy handed down by our forebears. To die, to sleep. To sleep, he's using sleep in kind of the biblical sense as a metaphor for death. 'Tis a consummation, devoutly to be wished. Consummation, an end. That's what that word means. An ending. The consummation of a marriage is the ending of the marriage day. It's the reason for, raison d'etre, of the marriage. Okay? It's also consummatum est. It is consummated. Last words of Christ on the cross? No. It is finished. The end. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. The only problem is, in Elizabethan England, suicide was not devout by any means. Okay? It's an unforgivable sin. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. Well, what did he tell Rosencrantz and Guildenstern earlier? I could be bounded in a nutshell and be a king of infinite space. What comes next? Were it not that I had bad dreams. There's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. In other words, in that sleep, what might we dream? What might we experience in that sleep of death? Notice, there's the rub. The friction is what he means. The unpleasant part of sleep. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, meaning his condescension, his arrogance toward me, the pangs of disprized love? What happened in his previous interview, let's say, with Ophelia? She wouldn't speak to him. Okay? The pangs of disprized love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make, with a bare bodkin. Now, go back to the beginning of that sentence and unpack it. Okay? What is he saying? The person who will live a long life will experience the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of disprized love. What else? The law's delay. What does that mean, the law's delay? Not the immediate satisfaction of law.
Well, it could either mean specifically his situation wherein he has been illegally usurped by his uncle, or it could be the more generic sense of don't you hate standing in line at the DMV. Regardless, it's a universal situation.
Okay. The insolence of office, which I think is more of the standing in line at the DMV.
Okay.
How many times have you been to the DMV or some other governmental office and had to deal with an insolent SOB officer of one sort or another? Or you've been stopped by a member of Murfreesboro's finest. And they, I say this, I've got a brother-in-law as a cop, who's not like most cops, because he doesn't have this power trip. But because they have the little badge and the weapon, they think they rule the world, or their own little, parcel of it. And the spurns, what? That patient merit of the unworthy takes. Who would endure all this when he could his quietus, his end, his death, make with a bare bodkin, a dagger? Who would fardels, that means burdens, fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will. Okay? Why is it most people who contemplate suicide don't actually perform it? Because their wills are puzzled. In other words, they start off with this mentality, I'm going to do it, and even those who attempt. Okay? We have attempted suicides. That means they obviously didn't what? Succeed. Well, why were they then only attempted? Because there's part that didn't want to succeed. Most attempted suicides aren't suicides not because they were a bad shot. You put a pistol in your mouth, you put a barrel in your mouth and pull the trigger. Unless you do this and shoot out through your cheek, you're not going to miss. But if you shoot through your cheek, what does that indicate? You really want to do it. So it's really a cry for help. Okay? And makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Now, go back a couple lines to line 80 and notice how he describes death. The undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns. Death's like a door. Because that door, we have a little slit of glass. We can see through it. We can't see through the door of death. We might have ideas of what lies beyond the door. Knowledge. We don't have facts. Okay? So, it's that undiscovered country that puzzles the will. That's why he says, thus conscience does make cowards of us all because we're unsure. And thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought. What is the native hue of resolution? Have you ever seen somebody who has totally resolved to do something? If you read about them in literature, what is their face often described as?
Twinkle in their eye kind of thing.
Okay, it could be a twinkle in their eye, but we hear words like set, firm. Who knows he has to go into a dangerous situation, a life and death situation. What does he do, or she? We say they steel themselves. What does that mean? Does that mean they become like Wolverine? They get adamantium poured into their bone structure? No.
Okay.
Okay.
They remove themselves from themselves. They separate their internal and their external.
Yeah.
Harden
They harden themselves. How do you harden your face?
They straight teeth.
Take control of it.
You take control. Watch an athlete before a huge athletic event. Are they sitting there?
They scowl.
No, they're psyching themselves up. That's what he means. The native hue of resolution. But what happens to it? It is sicklied over with pale cast of thought. Notice, thought does what? Makes you question. And so that native hue of resolution kind of becomes, I'm not so sure about this. And so the face reflects doubt. For a moment to, Tuesday night, if you watched election returns. Early on in the night, okay, what were the kind of looks on people's faces on the news? Whether you're talking news anchors or you're talking members of Congress up for re-election or President Obama or Governor Romney, etc., when you saw their faces, because you didn't usually see the two presidential candidates' faces. But when you finally did, what did their faces say? I mean, I saw something before I went to bed because I turned it off. About 10 o'clock, Rob Portman, Senator of Ohio, was speaking to the Romney headquarters via telephone. Okay, and then they had Speaker Boehner was reelected. Obviously, I mean, he's not going to be unelected. But he was reelected, and his first, and Representative Ryan, and his face said everything. Because the thought behind his face said, we lost. We weren't going to pull this one out. We weren't going to win this. Okay? So, the native hue of resolution is sicklied over with the pale cast of thought. In enterprises of great pitch and moment. Great pitch means great endeavor. But what is a pitch also?
Well, pitch, you mean like musically?
No.
There's a lot of different.
It's a battlefield. The pitch. Out in front. If you're in Harry Potter, you know, it's the Quidditch pitch. Okay? In soccer in England, they call the field the pitch. Okay? He means a field of great decision where two opposing forces will meet. Enterprises of great pitch and moment with this regard. What regard? Thought. Their currents turn awry and lose the name of action. Have you ever decided to do something and you're getting ready to do it and you're almost ready to do it and you think about it and you stop?
I know I listened to the Burt Show when I'm driving, and before the election,
You listen to what, Will?
the Burt Show on.
Go ahead.
Before the elections, this person said that if Romney didn't win, they were willing to move to, I think Rio. And so the Burt show said, okay, well, if he doesn't, we're going to call you back and we're going to pay for your trip there. And so then they called him back and he disconnected his number because he thought about it.
You know, Alec Baldwin in 2004, I think it was, famously said, if George Bush gets reelected, I'm moving to Paris.
Yeah.
And yet he's still on, what's the TV show, 30 Rock, New York. He still lives in New York, you know. He hasn't moved. So much for, okay. And you always hear, my opinion, idiots say things like that at every election. You know, if my team doesn't win, I'm going to take my ball and I'm going to go away. You know, it's the 5-year-old mentality to presidential elections and such. All right. They lose the name of action because thoughts turn what? The currents away. Well, the current should carry you, shouldn't it? Yes. But thought does what? Kills it. Stops it in its tracks. Soft you now, the fair Ophelia. Okay, now that's Hamlet speaking. He comes out, and he's apparently looking on the ground. Why? Because apparently he's always looking at the ground. And he looks up and he sees Ophelia. That's one way to give directions. What else can a director tell Hamlet to do? When he comes in from the door and steps on the stage, he sees Ophelia and then looks down. Because who might this whole speech be for? Ophelia. It might be for her to hear. This might be Hamlet's using Ophelia just like her father uses her. Okay? In just a moment, we're going to hear Ophelia refer to Hamlet as the observed of all observers, the watched of all watchers, in other words, the spied upon of all spies. Now, if Ophelia realizes that is what's going on, then what does she realize about herself? She's part of it. She's a player in this action. So how empty is, remember the other day I put her initial up. How empty is Ophelia? How innocent is Ophelia? Okay? I mean, listen, her father told her, read on this book that show of such exercise may color your loneliness. In other words, he's telling her, go, so Hamlet will see you and talk to you. So, Hamlet addresses her. Nymph, in thy orisons be all my sins remembered. He isn't telling her, oh, Ophelia, please, when you pray to God, remember before him all my sins. And God, don't forget, Hamlet is vile. Don't forget, Hamlet is lustful. Don't forget, Hamlet is full of gluttony. Don't forget, Hamlet is full of anger. Like she's saying, kill him, God. Make him suffer. It's not what he means. What does he mean? What does he mean?
It means for her to pray for things.
Pray for me in my sinfulness. That's what he means. Okay? And so she says, good, my lord, how does your honor for this many a day? I thank you. I have remembrances of yours that I have longed to re-deliver. I pray you now receive them. And she offers tokens, letters, flowers, etc. Hamlet, they're not mine. I never gave you aught. Composed has made the things more rich. She says the words are composed of sweet breath. In other words, they come from where? They come from his heart. They are the expirations, not the inspirings, the expirings of his breath. Their perfume lost. Well, why and how have they lost their perfume? Is she saying Hamlet's words lack sincerity? Why's the perfume gone? Because Dad won't let me hang around with you anymore. Perfume? Her father has taught her that the perfume in those tokens originally was false. When she says, when givers prove unkind, she's saying, I now see through the tokens. What were the tokens according to Polonius? Springs to catch woodcocks, traps to catch birds. Okay? Hamlet, are you honest? She's got to be thinking, what? Are you honest, my lord? Are you fair? What means, your lordship? That if you be honest and fair, your honesty should admit no discourse to your beauty. Beauty is just another word for fair. She's like, okay. What do you mean? Could beauty, my lord, have better commerce than with honesty? She is thinking platonically. Plato said that if there is true honesty, if there is true nobility of character, how will it be expressed? Nobility and beauty of face. And vice versa is also true. If one is ugly of face, ugly of demeanor, then one has an ugly inside. Right? So to be beautiful on the outside is to be beautiful on the inside. To be ugly on the outside is to be ugly on the inside. And Ophelia is saying, but my lord, shouldn't beauty go with honesty? Okay. Hamlet, aye. For the power of beauty will sooner transform honesty from what it is to a bawd. Well, what's a bawd? A pimp. So what's the purpose of a pimp? To procure flesh. He is saying beauty will transform honesty. It will use honesty falsely. Then the force of honesty can translate beauty into his likeness. Hamlet is saying you can be beautiful on the outside and be rotten and foul inside. Just look at the sonnets, okay, that we discussed. This was sometimes a paradox, but now the time gives it proof. Why does the time give it proof? Is he saying Ophelia is false on the inside and beautiful on the outside? I don't think so. Though I do think Hamlet realizes Ophelia is being used and that she's become a pawn in this great game. I think he's talking about Claudius, who appears to be one thing, and inside he is foul. Okay? I did love you once. Notice the tense. Did once. Indeed, my lord, you made me believe so. You should not have believed me. Why? For virtue cannot so inoculate our old stock, but we shall relish of it. What's the old stock that he's talking about? There is possibly, knowing Shakespeare, in almost all entirety there is, a pun. Okay? Old stock is used in two senses. Stock meaning body, form, the old Adam. Okay. Be renewal in Christ. Okay. And then what else? Our old stock, our old penis, as it were. Notice what he's just said. Virtue cannot so inoculate. Virtue, in other words, he's saying, is not a vaccine. Virtue cannot clean the old. Go back to what Shakespeare undoubtedly knew, I think. Dante. You know, read Dante's Divine Comedy. You've got Inferno, Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. Has anybody read the Divine Comedy? A couple of you, okay? Who is his guide in Inferno? Virgil. Okay. Why Virgil? Because Virgil wrote these books called the Eclogues, these poems called the Eclogues, that are taken by early Christians to be, etc. It's Virgil taken. Ascend the Mount of Purgatory. In other words, he gets to a plain and there is a river. I think it's Lethe. And Virgil has to stop here. He can't go any farther. Why? Because Virgil is the representative of natural virtue. Natural, meaning non-revealed, non-Christian virtue. All the good, pagan, noble attributes. Reason. Okay. Good living, etc. He can only get him this far. So what happens? He needs another guide to take him here forward. Okay? And even when he leaves purgatory, he gets a third guide, I believe. I'm trying to remember who this is. Who's the guide he gets for purgatory? Is it Beatrice? No, Beatrice is paradise. Okay? So, that's what he means. Virtue cannot inoculate the old stock. It can't make us perfect. But we shall relish of it. Relish of what? The old stock. The old Adam within. Meaning sin. Okay? You know, there's that stupid bumper sticker. Christians aren't perfect, only forgiven. What does that mean? It means Christians enjoy sin just as much as the next person. Okay? Enjoy. That is in the act of sinning. They're kind of like, yeah, yes, you know, let it wash all over me, kind of a thing. And then it's only afterwards they go, oops, shouldn't have done that, kind of a, okay? I loved you not. He's already told her that. I was the more deceived. Get thee to a nunnery. Why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? Very Catholic and yet even more general Christian idea. Everyone born is a sinner. I am myself indifferent honest. What do we mean by the word indifferent? I'm not saying that Shakespeare meant it. You don't care. I don't care honest. Okay? But yet I could accuse me of such things that it were better my mother had not borne me. I could accuse me of such things. I mean, what's he done? Killed children, abducted children, harmed little puppies and kittens. And we don't know. I think what he means, however, is I have sinned. And that is reason alone that it would be better for my mother not to have borne me. But Shakespeare gives us, some other stuff. I'm very proud. I am revengeful. I am ambitious. Now, why does he use those three terms? Vengeful, ambitious, proud.
Well, vengeful is obvious because he's obsessed with it now.
Does everybody else know he's obsessed with it?
Oh, that's true.
No. But if we assume that Hamlet knows what's going on, that is, if he knows that he is the most observed of all observers, and that all of his actions are being watched and recorded, as it were, then why would he say this?
Flipping off the surveillance camera.
So,
Exactly.
Is almost like a warning.
Yes!
If you're listening to this.
It's his way of saying, hello, Claudius, read me loud and clear. Okay? with more offenses at my beck, that is at my call, than I have thoughts to put them in. Imagination to give them shape, or time to act them. Okay? What should such fellows as I do, crawling between earth and heaven? Notice that. Crawling. Here's heaven. Here's earth. And he says, what should such fellows as I do, crawling? Why not walking? Why not ascending from earth to heaven? You know, the whole great chain of being idea, that mankind is midway between the angelic world and the bestial world. And the idea is to tap into the angelic side of our nature and to rise, to become godlike. He uses the word crawling. Why?
Is he insinuating throwing the same ball?
Yeah. Okay. What else? Think, if you've read it before, think King Lear. When Lear, which we'll be doing soon, when Lear, okay, divides his kingdom, what does he say he wants to do after he gives up the kingdom to his daughters? He says, while I crawl, unburdened toward death. Crawl. Why is it a crawl? Okay, you fall before you walk. Why? Slow and deliberate.
Things that crawl are generally not great.
Okay, creepy things.
Yeah. Well, it's like, yeah, you're coming to your base, or you're not ascending, you're going to your base.
When else do you crawl? Okay, when you're a baby. How about when you lack the strength to walk? And you're crawling, you're scrambling forward, arm by arm, handful by handful of dirt or ground. You know. Crawl unburdened. Unburdened with what in Lear? With the powers of rule and everything, or problems of rule and everything. Okay? So he says, we are errant knaves all. Believe none of us. Errant. And it has a couple of meanings. It means haughty, but it also means wrong direction. Okay? It is also related to, you've heard the phrase, knights errant. Do you know what it means in this context? Wandering. Knights out looking for a damsel to, save, a dragon to kill, an ogre to kill. Okay? Knights errant were knights out doing knightly things. But he says, not knights, knaves, foolish people, worthless people. Okay? Believe none of us. What has he just said? Believe none of us. How could that be interpreted?
Don't believe me or your dad.
Don't believe me or your father. Or also, don't believe a word I'm saying. This could be Hamlet's way of telling Ophelia, Ophelia, I'm play acting. This is all a show for somebody else. Don't pay attention. Where's your father? Why does he ask, where's your father? Look at her response. At home. True or false? She's lying to him. Okay? He says, believe no one. Go thy ways to a nunnery. Where's your father? At home, my lord. I think Hamlet was kind of reaching, I could be completely entirely wrong. I think Hamlet was reaching out to her. He was giving her a means of responding to him that would tell him, okay, she's still with me. Where's your father? At home. Wrong answer there, honey.
Wink, wink.
Let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but in his own house. Why would he say that to Ophelia? Let the doors be shut on him, so that he plays the fool nowhere but in his own house.
It could just be saying her dad's an idiot.
Okay, he could just be saying, your father's an idiot. Tell him to stay at home. He could also be not so subtly warning Polonius. I know where you are. Don't stick your nose in my business. Okay? Ophelia, help him, you sweet heavens. She's not talking to Hamlet here. Oh God, help him. Him who? Hamlet or her father? Not her father. She's talking about Hamlet. She thinks he's bonkers. If thou dost marry, I'll give thee this plague for thy dowry. Okay, dowry's supposed to be good things. Okay? Be thou as chaste as ice, as pure as snow, thou shalt not escape calumny. That is, if you are as chaste as ice, and thus never have sex, as pure as snow, not as pure as a lily, nice, beautiful, soft, fragrant flower, but cold, hard, frozen water, you still won't escape calumny. People ridiculing you, people casting aspersions on you. Get thee to a nunnery. Why to a nunnery? He said that now 3 times. Well, nuns generally don't have children.
Yeah, she'd be safe there.
She'll be safe. They won't have contact with men. Okay?
She'll be used anymore.
She won't be used. Or if thou wilt needs marry, marry a fool. Why? For wise men know well enough what monsters you make of them. You who? You, Ophelia?
He's saying it kind of.
You women. Well, what kind of monsters do women make of men?
All kinds.
Okay. He's talking about a specific kind. This is a medieval idea. Sorry to tell you this, guys, but this is the medieval perspective. This is not me speaking. All women make of their husband cuckolds.
Oh, yeah, okay. I remember
Okay? Where they put the proverbial horns on your head. Okay? Why or how? Why? Because you can't be trusted. And because they're lascivious. Their hormones govern everything. They cannot be sexually satisfied by one man. So they have sex with their husband. He falls asleep. They get out. They go to the house next door. They have sex with him. He falls asleep. They get out. They go to the house next door. This is kind of the medieval mindset. Okay? That's what he means. That's what he means. That they make monsters of women. That's why he says, marry a fool. Because the fool won't know. The fool won't realize. Get thee to a nunnery. Go. Heavenly powers restore him. I've heard of your paintings too. What's Hamlet doing by this point? Stalling? Is he pulling out all the stops on his pretending to be crazy? God hath given you one face and you make yourselves another. Mr. Max Factor, Miss Maybelline, Clairol, whatever. You jig, you amble, you lisp, you nickname God's creatures. That is, you give them little pet names and make your wantonness your ignorance. Well, what's wantonness? Your openness to others. Go. I'll know more on it. It's made me mad. I say we will have no more marriage. Why is he going on like this about marriage? Dear old mother, what hath she done? Nay, 'tis not 2 months. And she posts with such dexterity 2 incestuous sheets, Hamlet said in that first soliloquy. Those that are married already, all but one, shall live. Who's the all but one? Ophelia doesn't have a flying fig what he's talking about. She doesn't have a clue.
Just staring.
But does somebody else? The rest shall keep as they are. Go. Hamlet leaves. Ophelia gets a soliloquy. Notice. Oh, what a noble mind is here overthrown. And she tells us how noble. She tells us what Hamlet is to the people of Denmark. The courtiers, soldiers, scholars, eye-tongue sword, the expectancy and rose of the fair state. She's saying everybody looked to him. The courtier looked to him as the model to be emulated. The soldier did, the scholar did. And what did they look to? His eye, his tongue, his sword. He was the expectancy, meaning everybody looked to him for the future of Denmark. The glass of fashion. Hamlet was the mirror that everybody wanted to look into. Men wanted to look into the mirror and see Hamlet. Women wanted to look into the mirror and see Hamlet. Okay? The observed of all observers. Quite down. Meaning, cast down from his heavenly, godlike nature. You know, Hamlet referred to his father as being like whom earlier? Hyperion, god of the sun. And she says, Hamlet, is cast down. An eye of ladies most deject and wretched. Why? That sucked the honey of his music vows. She didn't just listen to his pretty voice. She says she sucked the sweetness right out of all of it. So that when Hamlet previously told her, I love you, or to quote Elizabeth Barrett Browning, how do I love thee, let me count the ways. When Hamlet said that to her, he had her hook, line, and sinker. Now, she says, I see that noble and most sovereign reason like sweet bells jangled out of tune and harsh. That unmatched form and feature of blown youth blasted with ecstasy. Oh, woe is me to have seen what I have seen, both past and now. That is, to have seen Hamlet in his perfection. And to see what I see. What does she see? She sees Denmark in the way Hamlet described it to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. A weeded garden. A garden full of weeds. A sterile promontory. How horrible the world has become. And the king and Polonius come in. Notice what the king says. Love? No. He ain't mad either. His affections do not that way tend. Nor would he spake, though it lacked form a little. It wasn't madness. No, there's something in his soul over which his melancholy sits unbrewed. So he says, I'm sending him to England. Polonius, I still think maybe it has something to do with love. But go ahead. Plan on sending him to England. But first, let's send him to your wife in her bedroom. Notice what Polonius keeps suggesting. Let's spy on Hamlet. Okay? What does Polonius seem to be really good at? Spying. Okay? He sends Rinaldo after his son. He sends his daughter after Hamlet. He sends Hamlet's mother, essentially, to spy on Hamlet. Okay?
He's basically the intelligence chief.
He's the Stasi. Or CIA, if you want. So we get Act 3, Scene 2. Now we're going to kind of zip along some. And Hamlet speaks to the players. And notice what he tells them. Speak the speech. This isn't really important necessarily for Hamlet, but it's Shakespeare, the playwright and actor, talking to us. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. But if you mouth it, as many of our players do, I had as lief the town crier spoke my lines. Now, I think this is Shakespeare telling his actors, would you guys quit screwing up my plays? Okay? Nor do not saw the air too much with your hand. Don't be one of these wild gesticulators, but use all gently. It offends me to the soul to hear a robustious, periwig-pated fellow tear a passion to tatters to very rags, to split the ears of the groundlings, who for the most part are capable of nothing but inexplicable dumb shows and noise. Ouch! He's just called the people standing in the pit dumb and stupid. Right?
Tomatoes.
Yeah, and everything else that's around them. Hamlet, be not too tame neither, but let your own discretion be your tutor. Suit the action to the word to the action. With this special observance, don't overstep the modesty of nature. For anything so overdone is from the purpose of playing. And then he's going to tell us what is the purpose of playing. What's the purpose of drama? Whose end is, both first and now, to hold as 'twere the mirror up to nature, to show virtue her feature, scorn her own image in the very age and body of the time, his form and pressure. I think that's Hamlet's way of telling the audience, this is you. This what? Where is Hamlet in you? Where is Ophelia in you? Where is Claudius in you? Now, if you think about that, that could be very dangerous. Okay? How did Queen Elizabeth become queen? She killed her older sister. Okay, it was 40 years ago. But still, she killed her older sister. How did Claudius become king? He killed his older brother. Queen Elizabeth also killed her cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots, in 1585. Why? She was afraid Mary was going to try and take over the throne. Politics is rife through Shakespeare's plays. Okay? So he says, this overdone, that is holding up the mirror to nature, overdone or come tardy off, though it makes the unskillful laugh, that is, the idiots down in the yard, cannot but make the judicious, the paying, thinking people in the galleries, grieve, the censure of the which one must in your allowance overweigh a whole theater of others. Okay? So, Hamlet goes on, and we see him, and he talks with Horatio and such. The king and queen come in, and they're getting ready to put on the play. Hamlet has told the player, I want you to maybe, add a few lines already. And the king and queen come in and sit down, and Ophelia sits down, and the queen says, come on, Hamlet, come sit by me, son. You don't know how old Hamlet is yet, do you? It's not till Act 5 we find out how old Hamlet is. Okay? And Hamlet says, no, good mother, here's metal more attractive, line 108. Polonius, oh, do you see that? Hamlet to Ophelia, lady, shall I lie in your lap? Rather personal question.
Yeah.
And in public? No, my lord. I mean, my head upon your lap. Shakespeare, double entendre, never discount it. Okay? I, my lord, that is, I know what you mean. Do you think I meant country matters? Okay, keep in mind, Shakespeare's day, country was often spelled Cuntry. And he says, do you think I meant that? I think nothing, my lord. Nothing. How do you represent that? With a big fat zero. That comes right after the word country. Okay. Who is Shakespeare appealing to?
Yeah.
The groundlings, because they're going to be roaring on the floor, laughing at his dirty jokes. While the gentry, the highfalutin, high-minded people are going to be going, oh, please, must we have more of this bawdy, infantile humor?
So he already kissed her ass at the beginning of the act.
Exactly. Okay? He's already spoken up to the galleried people. I think nothing, my lord. Hamlet. That's a fair thought to lie between maid's legs. What's a fair thought to lie between maid's legs? Nothing. An openness. Okay? What is, my lord? Nothing. You're merry. Who? I. God, you're only jig maker. What should a man do but be merry? For look you how cheerfully my mother looks, and my father died within his 2 hours. Nay, 'tis twice 2 months. So long? Really? He's been dead, gee, all of 4 months? And she already remarried? Okay, so we see the dumb show, we see the player king and such. Hamlet tells them that it's called the mousetrap. It's also called the murder of Gonzago. Hamlet tells them what happens. The brother pours the poison in the ear. Claudius jumps up, runs out. And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come up to him. And Hamlet takes one of the recorders from one of the players. And they keep asking questions. And Hamlet takes the recorder and hands it to Guildenstern. It says, will you play upon this? Guildenstern, I do not understand. I can't. I pray you, I cannot. I beseech you. I know no touch of it, my lord. Well, it's as easy as lying. That is, you find it very easy to lie, then you ought to be able to play this. Look, you govern these vintages, put your fingers on the holes, and then you blow in it. But these cannot I command. To any utterance of harmony, I have not the skill. Why, look you now, how unworthy a thing you make of me. Beautiful image there. You would play upon me, you would seem to know my stops, you would pluck out the heart of my mystery, you would sound me from my lowest note to the top of my compass. And there is much music in this little organ. Yet cannot you make it speak. Splud, do you think I am easier to be played on than a pipe? How dare you? Okay? Polonius comes in. Your mother would like to speak with you. Hamlet, okay. Everybody leaves. Hamlet gets a soliloquy. This is, it's either 4 or 5. Okay? 'Tis now the very witching time of night. What does that mean? It's midnight. Or it's nearly midnight. When churchyards yawn and hell itself breathes out contagion to this world. Now could I drink hot blood. In other words, now I could kill him. I'll speak daggers to her, but use none. King comes in, Act 3, Scene 3, talks with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. They leave, and the king gets a soliloquy. He tells the audience, oh man, am I bad. I'm really, really bad. My offense is rank, he says. It smells to high heaven. And Hamlet comes in and he overhears the king telling this speech. or the end of the speech, after the king kneels, he gets down on his knees, he crosses himself, clasps his hands, and he prays. And Hamlet walks in at that point. Now I could do it. His back's to me. He's well, wait a second. If I kill him now, he goes to heaven. What kind of revenge is that? I kill him while he's praying? No. That's not good. What has Hamlet just done? In that little scene, he thought about it. Okay? His visage of resolution becomes sicklied over with the pale cast of thought. Because what happens when Hamlet leaves? The king gets up. My words fly up, my thoughts remain below. Words without thoughts never to heaven go. Meaning, I'm not really sorry for it yet. My prayer doesn't mean diddly squat. Okay? So Hamlet goes off to his mother's room. And what happens? Okay, notice Polonius is standing behind the arras. Hamlet has his little interview with his mother. He sees the ghost. He talks to the ghost, and she thinks he's completely lost it. He's speaking to the air. And she's afraid Hamlet's going to do something to her, and she says, "What? Oh, help!" And Polonius speaks out, and what does Hamlet do? Stabs him. How? Through the arras. What does that tell us about the arras? It's on the stage. So go back to Act 3. What is it? Scene 3? When Hamlet delivers to be or not to be. And they are standing behind the arras. Here's how I think every director ought to show that. You can see their feet under the curtain. As a visible reminder, Polonius and the king are there when Hamlet delivers that speech. And in all of his conversation with Ophelia. Okay? So that when he talks about being murderous, full of revenge, ambitious, the king's going, yikes. Okay? So Hamlet gets to Gertrude. He does speak daggers to her. He does open her heart. And she says, "Sorry, I'll not sleep with your uncle anymore," blah, 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 blah. Okay?
In the rank sweat of an enseamed bed.
Yeah. Great lines. So, go to Act 4. Well, take that back. Just before Act 4. When Hamlet tells her to throw away the worser part of it, she's talking about her heart's been rent in twain. Throw away the worst part, live the pure with the other half. Go not to my uncle's bed. Assume a virtue, if you have it not. What does that mean? St. Paul says the same thing.
Fake it till you make it.
Exactly. Act virtuously if you cannot be virtuous. At least pretend it. Because what will happen over time? You become virtuous through acting it. Okay? The Hamlet's last speech. Hamlet says, "Oh, by the way, mother, you do know I'm going to England, right?" She goes, "Oh, I forgot." Hamlet, "There's letters sealed, and my 2 schoolfellows, whom I will trust as adders fanged, bear the mandate." What's he telling us about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern? I don't trust him farther than I can throw him. Okay? And he goes on and says, "They must sweep my way and marshal me to knavery. Let it work. For 'tis the sport to have the engineer hoist with his own petard." The engineer hoist with his own petard. Petard means explosion. It's the sport, he says, to have the engineer, the bomb maker, blown up with his own explosion. Hamlet is telling us, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, they're going to pay for their actions. So Act 4, Scene 1. Notice, he says, Sorry, didn't mean to kill Polonius. I thought he was his better. I thought it was the king. Did he really think before killing the person behind the arras? No. He acted. Then he realizes it's Polonius and is like, damn. Okay. Act 4, Scene 1. The queen tells the king what has happened, and the king says, "Oh, heavy deed, it had been so with us had we been there. His liberty is full of threats to us all." So he's got to go. Okay? Act 4, Scene 2. Hamlet talks with Rosencrantz. Okay? They want to know where Polonius is. And Hamlet's kind of beating around the bush. King comes in, Act 4, Scene 3. He says, "Hamlet, where's the king?" Or, "Where's Polonius?" Okay? And Hamlet says, "He's at supper." What? At supper? Where? Not where he eats, but where he is eaten. A certain convocation of politic worms are even at him. Your worm is your only emperor for diet. What Hamlet and Shakespeare is doing is he's playing upon the Diet of Worms that happened in 1521. The Diet of Worms was a convocation, which simply means a calling together. And who was there? The emperor was there. The Holy Roman Emperor, which is, Charles V, I think, at this time? Okay. Well, what's the Diet of Worms? It's when Martin Luther was called to the emperor's presence and was demanded to recant everything he'd been writing since October 31st, 1517. October 31st, Halloween, 1517, is when Martin Luther nails his 95 Theses to the church door in Wittenberg. Wittenberg, where Hamlet was a student. Okay? So, woven into the very heart of this play is the Protestant Reformation. And because the Protestant Reformation is woven into it, Catholicism also has to be there. Because you can't have a Protestant Reformation without the Catholic Church. Right? At the Diet of Worms, Luther was told, he was given safe passage, which meant you will arrive here safely and you can leave here safely. No one will arrest you or accost you, etc. At the Diet of Worms, he was told, recant everything you've written since October 31st, 1517. Because he'd been a busy little beaver and he'd been writing a lot. Okay? And Luther is reported to have said, after having asked for 24 hours to think and pray about it, unless it can be proven to me by conscience or Holy Scripture, here I stand, meaning I stand with everything I have written. Here I stand, I can do no other. Okay? Luther leaves and he's kidnapped. But he's kidnapped by his friends and supporters. And they put him up in the castle at Wittenberg to write, and he writes and he translates Jerome's Vulgate version of the Bible into German. Why? So that every individual German could have a copy of the Bible if they wanted. It's the first time the Vulgate, or the Bible, is put into a native vernacular language. This thing gets burned in England. Okay? When Tyndale first translates the Bible into English, he gets hounded by Henry VIII. Okay? And he eventually dies in a prison, etc. So that's the import behind those words. But it also is a forward-looking passage leading us to Act 5. So Hamlet goes on and he compares the king to beggars, etc. I'm going to skip a whole lot. So 4:4. Hamlet's on his way to the ship that'll take him to England, and they run across Fortinbras, young Fortinbras, nephew of the King of Norway, etc. And Hamlet sees this army of 20,000 men who are going to fight over a little piece of property that is worthless. And why are they fighting for it? Honor. And Hamlet takes that and applies it to himself, and he says, and here I have a father killed. And what has he done? Nothing. Okay, where are we? We're at Act 4, Scene 4 of the play. We've gone through 3 acts from the time when the ghost said, avenge my death. So, Act 4, Scene 5. Ophelia comes in. And what's happened to Ophelia? She's gone crazy. Hamlet starts her on the path, and the death of her father sends her over. Okay? And then Laertes comes in. I'm trying to get us done with the 10 minutes we have left. And then Laertes comes in. Why is Laertes back from France? Because word has reached him that his father's dead. And he's like Hotspur. Somebody's got to pay for this. Okay? So the king and Laertes conspire together. Hamlet comes back, 4-6. He meets up with Horatio. He tells Horatio what happens. And he sends letters to the king. The letters are brought to the king. And the king reads them. Line 45, Act 4, Scene 7. And the king reads, high and mighty, you shall know I am set naked on your kingdom. Line 45, your gloss tells you, destitute, unarmed, without following. In other words, just little old me, I'm all alone. Okay, I think naked, however, can have another connotation. And that Hamlet is saying, it's just me and you now. Mano a mano. Okay? Tomorrow shall I beg leave to see your kingly eyes. And the king says it's definitely Hamlet's hand. And so the king and Laertes come up with the plot. Laertes is pretty good with a foil. Hamlet's fat. He's not been practicing. Okay? And the king says, to make sure you win, I'll put some poison on the end of your foil and such. And I'll mix a little poison in a drink. So even if you don't stab him, he'll drink the poison and die. And then we find out Ophelia drowns. Notice the play never makes it clear how Ophelia drowns, other than that she sucks water into her lungs. How else can one drown? But whether it is intentional or accidental is not made clear. So, what's been happening emotionally through the audience? Tension is building. I mean, you get to beginning of Act 5, and you're about to explode if you've been paying any attention. So we get a clown scene. Shakespeare's got to ratchet down the emotional level a little bit. And what are the 2 clowns, gravediggers, talking about? Why does she get a Christian burial? She killed herself. Suicides aren't supposed to be buried in a churchyard. Yeah, but the king apparently said she gets a Christian burial. Okay? So Hamlet runs into the clowns, the gravediggers. And they throw up skulls and such. In line 98, we're not going to finish more than likely. Maybe we will. Line 98, Hamlet picks up a skull and says, why may not that be the skull of a lawyer? Lawyer jokes are as old as lawyers, by the way. And Shakespeare always wants to kill the lawyers. It's in one of the Henry plays, Henry the Sixth, I think he says. He says, first, kill all the lawyers. It's a very famous quote. Where be his quiddities now? Quiddities, his splitting of hairs. Bill Clinton's, it depends on the meaning of is. Why does he suffer this mad knave now to knock him about the sconce with a dirty shovel? Okay. Hamlet goes on, keeps talking about him. And they throw up another skull. And Hamlet's like, man, you guys, you don't deal very respectfully with the dead here. Okay. And they talk about Hamlet. And the first clown says around line 145 or so, every fool can tell that. It was that very day young Hamlet was born. Okay, they're talking about the skull that's just been thrown up. Okay. Well, how long is that since? Okay, the day that our King Hamlet overcame, let me back up. Line 117, Hamlet asks, whose grave is this? First clown, mine, sir. Hamlet, well, it is yours because you were lying in it. No. He says, whose was this? Okay. And they ask about who was buried there, and he says, person was buried here, or he asks, how long have you been a gravedigger? And he says, of all the days in the year, I came to it that day that our last King Hamlet overcame Fortinbras. How long is that since? Cannot you tell that? It was the very day young Hamlet was born. Well, when was that? Well, why was he sent to England? Because he was mad. And the first clown then says, line 161, says, I've been man and boy here, I've been sexton here, man and boy, 30 years. When did he first become sexton? The day Hamlet was born. Does that fit your picture of Hamlet? He's 30 years old. He's still a student at Wittenberg? Is he a professional student? Just one graduate degree after another? Okay. So they keep talking. And then they pull up Yorick's skull. Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him, Horatio. Line 183. A fellow of infinite jest, of excellent fancy. He hath borne me on his back 1,000 times. Okay. And they keep talking, and then Hamlet asks, dost thou think Alexander looked of this fashion in the earth? Alexander the Great. Horatio, yeah. Smelt it, yeah. To what base uses we may return, Horatio? Why may not imagination trace the noble dust of Alexander till it find it stopping a bunghole? What a piece of work is man, Hamlet says to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And yet he says, what is man to me but a quintessence of dust? Look at Yorick. And then he goes back in time. Look at Horatio. Look at Alexander. Imperious Caesar, 213, dead and turned to clay, might stop a hole to keep the wind away. Oh, that earth which kept the world in awe should patch a wall to expel the winter's flaw. But soft, here comes the king. Here, where? Specifically, here to the grave. Why? Because Ophelia is being buried. Here, where, generically, to the grave. The king will die. Hamlet will die. Horatio will die. Ophelia has died. Everyone will die and become a quintessence of dust. How is the king any different from the clown? None. Okay? So, Hamlet and Laertes jump into Ophelia's grave. Why? Why does Hamlet jump into Ophelia's grave? What does he do in doing so? His love for her. He says, Zound, show me what thou do, line 277. Wilt weep, that is, wilt thou weep? Wilt fight, wilt fast, wilt tear thyself? I'll do it. Dost come here to whine, to outface me with leaping in her grave? Be buried quick with her, and so will I. And if thou prate of mountains, let them throw millions of acres on us, till our ground, singeing his pate against the burning zone, make Asa like a wart. The queen, this is madness. Hamlet, hear you, sir. What is the reason that you use me thus? I loved you ever. He's talking to Laertes. You and I always got along. Okay? So, Act 5, Scene 2. Hamlet and Horatio talk. They find out that Laertes has challenged him to a duel. Osric comes in. And we'll stop there. We will pick up with about line 225 or so in Act 5, Scene 2. But go ahead and start, obviously, for whatever day it is. What's today? Thursday? For Tuesday, the next play on the syllabus, which I believe is Othello. Okay?